So we're going to discover the root cause. Emotional intelligence is 58% of your success, both professionally and private. It accounts for more than anything else in your life. And we've got to learn to develop that today. Now, there's 5 pillars of emotional intelligence. The first pillar is self-awareness. And self-awareness is your ability to understand why you think and feel the way that you do. In Freudian psychology for the past 100 years, they have known that people with higher levels of emotional intelligence heal faster after illness. People with a low level of emotional intelligence and self-awareness find it very hard to heal. The second pillar is self-regulation. This is your ability to get yourself out of any mental or emotional rut that you could ever get yourself into. Have you had that before? You know you should be making phone calls, but you're looking in the fridge. You don't find the answer in the fridge, and you go back and you look again. Then you go to the pantry, and then you go to Facebook. So self-regulation is your ability to get yourself out of that mental or emotional rut. Some people can stay in these mental and emotional ruts for a lifetime. You know these people. They're in your family. You've had ex-partners who you just couldn't be with them anymore because they were in that emotional rut. And just like a crab in a bucket, what do? They start to pull you down into it. So you've got to learn to self-regulate. Nobody's going to do it for you. You've got to do it for yourself. Thirdly is motivation. This is your ability to pursue your goals with energy and persistence. A lot of people don't have enough fuel in the tank, and they start to pursue these big, hairy, audacious goals, and they run out of energy. They run out of fuel. So what we need to have is a higher level of motivation. In the context of emotional intelligence, motivation is not jumping up and down. It's not that. It's your ability to get knocked down and get back up. It's about to get hit in the face with an objection and still moving forward in spite of that objection. And this is where a lot of salespeople fall over in the sales process, is because they don't have enough motivation. They don't have enough reasons why they need to make that sale. They run out of energy. And if you want to be incredibly emotional, intelligent as a person, as a family, as a community, you've got to learn to have more motivation. And there's 2 kinds of motivation. There's the carrot and the stick. Some people just focus on the carrot and they look at what they want and they say, that's going to pull me out into the future. And they move so heavily towards what they want that they never consider the risk of inaction. So you've got to make sure you know what you don't want to have happen as well, because that's a big motivator. That stick is a big motivator. But I shared a story recently with some of my clients, and I told them that the average self-made millionaire works for 60 hours a week for 20 years until they become a millionaire. And they almost go bankrupt 2.3 times. So after the seminar, I called them up. How's everything going? We're doing great. Are you taking action? No. I said, well, what's happening? They said, well, the funds have gone down. The money's not coming in. I said, well, what's happening? They said, well, you told us the average millionaire goes broke almost 2.5 times. So we're just waiting to get close to that before we take action. I said, no, you've got to think about that. You don't have to wait till it happens. So where was their emotional intelligence, high or low? It was still really low. So you've got to be careful what you hear at seminars. Before you leave today, just check in with us. Also, empathy. This is your ability to read other people's emotional makeup. And who's in sales, by the way? What does everybody else do? We've got to think of sales differently. Who has children? You've got to convince them to go to bed. Yeah, that's sales. My wife's at home. I have to sell her the idea, stop buying Gucci bags online whilst I'm away, because the Taiwanese love to do this. So we're in sales, and we have to read the emotional makeup of the other person, because people decide emotionally and they justify logically. And if we haven't tapped in to that emotion, we're just trying to sell logically. and we burn their brain cells out. Did you ever lick a battery, a 9-volt battery when you were younger? And that's like the sales process. They're just putting their tongue on that 9-volt battery and they're getting stung when you just hit them with all the details. You've got to go straight to the heart. And this is what Bram's talking about before. You have to go to the heart. And this is emotional intelligence. And the top salespeople in the world are emotionally intelligent. We also have social skills. This is your ability to manage relationships and build networks. Where are the B&I people? Okay, so hopefully not in B&I, but in other networking groups, what happens, people get their breakaways there 2 or 5 or 10 minutes. And all of a sudden, you haven't seen them for the whole day, and they pounce on you with the offer straight away. Their social skills are very poor. They don't know how to interact. They don't know how to listen. They haven't been trained to listen. So what we have to do is we have to learn how to listen. And this is a social skill. Some of the most interesting people that you'll ever meet just ask really good questions. And they smile and they listen. But they just don't listen with their ears. They lean forward. They listen with every cell of their body. Have you had that before? When you first met your partner, you sat across at the table and their eyes were like this big. And they just took in every bit of information. They leaned in. They said, "Tell me more." You've had that before? Absolutely. So social skills comes under emotional intelligence. And in an NLP training, what we're doing is we're developing all of these 5 key areas. And if you're weak in any one of these key areas, unfortunately, by law, you'll get left behind. So if you want to become incredibly successful in today's sales environment, you have to build very strong relationships. If your clients, if your prospects don't buy you, will they ever buy your products? Never. So if you become emotionally intelligent, you will read the play very well. And they'll want to do business with you because they like you. Doesn't matter how good your price is. Doesn't matter how much you reduce it. If they haven't bought you, they can't buy anything else. So as we go through today, I want you to take on these ideas that successful people are doing. And by the law of cause and effect, if you do what these people do, you'll get the same result. And if you don't, you won't. And you'll get left behind. So emotional intelligence, there's 5 key pillars. Now, this is James Lavelle. I met James, very self-aware. He said to me, "Daniel, I feel like I'm operating at 40%. This guy's earning £30,000 per month. And he says, I feel that I'm operating at 40%. I said, "Well, tell me about your life. Where have you come from?" And he said, "Well, I grew up in a council estate and we moved from home to home. My father was a drinker, my mother was a drinker. Everybody else in my family was going to jail." He said, "My mum left my dad. A couple of years later, he had a heart attack and he died. So at age 7, he's sleeping on urinated stained mattresses and moving from council house to council house. Just to get out of the council estate, he took a job at the bacon factory, slaughtering pigs. That was his first job, just to get out. And then as soon as he was old enough to join the military, he was shipped over to Afghanistan and he was on the front line. So this guy has seen some things that most of us would never see. But he's still striving. He's still moving forward. He's finding ways, not excuses, to succeed. But he still said to me, "Daniel, I'm earning £30,000 a month, but I feel like I'm operating at 40%. So through emotional intelligence, we actually can now measure this. And if you've ever seen an emotional quotient, you can measure your levels of emotional intelligence. You can compare your scores to the top 10% of performers in your field. Now, there's a direct correlation between emotional intelligence and how much you earn. For every 1 point increase in emotional intelligence, you'll add about 1,750 Australian dollars to your salary per point increase. We also now know that people with high levels of emotional intelligence earn up to $39,000 more than their low emotional intelligence counterparts. Same positions, same companies, but it applies to the same, every region of the world. It applies to there, even Adelaide. So when you increase your emotional intelligence, you'll make more money. So here's James. He goes to a networking event and people say, "Oh, gee, James is coming, run." Because he couldn't read the emotional makeup of other people. He had emotional diarrhea. he would see them and say, hey, I've got to tell you this bad story that's happening in my life, and he'd dump on them. And people started to go, quick, James is coming, run away. See, he couldn't regulate his emotions either. He had to share it with other people. Who's had that? Somebody calls up and they just want to take a dump on you. Hey, listen to what's happening. And you feel bad and they feel good. James was doing the same thing, but it impacted his success because people said, if he does this to us, we don't want to buy from him. So what I did is I showed James how to increase his self-regulation, how to improve that self-regulation. That's part of emotional intelligence. We also showed him how to neutralize those self-limiting beliefs. So after growing up in a counsellor state, what do you think you're conditioned to? Are you conditioned for success or failure? Yeah, you're told this is where you've come from. Never forget where you came from. What happens? Never forget. It's like an instruction from society. Never forget. And it actually forces you to stay there. And in his mind, although he was earning $30,000, he felt guilty. It's called survivor's guilt. He was the one who got out of the counsellor state. So with his self-sabotaging behaviours, he started to want to get rid of his money. Try to get rid of it. I don't want it because it makes me feel bad. So he had to learn how to counteract that. Now, he did. He did this inside of a very short amount of time. And once he increased his levels of emotional intelligence, he became a millionaire that year. His company, a $200 million company in America, a Inc. 5000 company, said, look at this guy's performance. What a drastic change. So they could see the behavioural change. They witnessed it. And they also saw the growth in his emotional intelligence. And they gave him founders' rights to their company. They gave him a 1% share of a $200 million company. Pretty cool, hey? And all he did was increase his self-awareness, improve his self-regulation, and manage his emotions. He did not learn a new skill. He did not learn new sales techniques, or he didn't learn the latest Facebook algorithm. It was an internal job. And that's what we were talking about before. Those things that prevent us from getting what we want are inside. So we've got to start to change that story. And this is what happened to James. Inside of 240 days, the first thing was he increased his self-awareness. He improved that by 5%. It's not a lot, but it went up. But what happened was because he was more self-aware of the way he was responding to the environment, he started to increase his self-regulation. And it went up by 97% in 240 days. He also increased his motivation. See, before he had low levels of motivation, he couldn't be bothered changing. Hey, I'm earning 30 grand a month. It doesn't matter. But he had to build the new motivation. Does this make sense? So you've also got to work on all key areas. And this is one of the biggest breakthroughs of the 20th century, that you can change your levels of emotional intelligence. And that is why James is now a millionaire. So because of the accuracy of these emotional quotient assessments, you can actually discover the root cause of your self-limiting beliefs, which means you can quickly neutralize those self-limiting beliefs and make a lot more money. Who'd like to?